Hey there, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating business case study, one that permanently changed how we interact with technology and digital content. Okay, let me set the stage for you. Picture this. It's January 2012, and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is sitting on a massive, seemingly contradictory dilemma. On one hand, Amazon has just pulled off an absolute miracle. In a little over 3 months, they've sold nearly 5 million Kindle Fire tablets, instantly snatching up half of the non-Apple tablet market share. It's a huge win, right? But despite this monumental triumph, Bezos is troubled. Wall Street is in a total panic, and the numbers on the stock exchange are flashing bright, panicked red.
Okay, let's dive into this because this is the core business mystery we're going to solve today. How on earth does a company sell 5 million units of a brand new, highly anticipated product, become the undisputed best selling device of the entire holiday season, and still trigger a massive investor sell off? Well, the answer lies in the deeply, fundamentally different ways that visionary founders and public market investors look at a balance sheet.
Just look at this plunge right here, a steep $40 drop in Amazon stock between late 2011 and early 2012, right exactly when the Kindle Fire was flying off the shelves. So, why did this happen? Basically, analysts were terrified. It was widely rumored, and honestly, essentially true, that Amazon was selling this powerful $199 piece of hardware at absolute cost. They were making zero profit, and maybe even taking a loss on the physical device itself. Wall Street investors were incredibly doubtful that Amazon could ever make up that upfront loss through other revenue streams. But, Bezos was playing an entirely different game. In his annual letter to shareholders, he famously laid it out, saying, "Invention is in our DNA. The long-term interests of our shareholders are perfectly aligned with the needs and wants of our customers." He wasn't chasing those immediate hardware margins like Wall Street wanted. He was playing 3D chess, focusing entirely on a long-term vision of customer lock-in and ecosystem dominance. To really wrap our heads around how we got to this high-stakes gamble, we kind of need to trace the rapid escalation of Amazon's hardware ambitions. Back in 2007, ebooks were just 1% of all book sales. Then, Amazon launched the original Kindle. Fast forward to 2009, they introduced the larger Kindle DX. In 2010, the refined Kindle keyboard arrived, and then, in late 2011, the Kindle Fire tablet changed absolutely everything. It wasn't just a reading device anymore, it was a full-fledged media consumption engine. And you can literally see this physical transformation happening right here. It goes from a clunky, stark white e-reader with a physical keyboard, evolving directly into a slick, color touchscreen tablet. Each generation was heavily focused on dramatically improving the user experience and driving the adoption of Amazon's digital library. But as newer entrants arrived on the scene, the hardware itself was quickly becoming commoditized. So by 2011, the strategic battlefield was completely set. The Kindle Fire found itself positioned squarely between two extremes: Barnes & Noble's Nook tablet on one side and Apple's premium iPad 2 on the other. While the Nook and the Fire were actually incredibly similar, which sparked fears of a brutal price war, Apple was operating in a totally different stratosphere, with larger screens, cameras, double the battery life, and a completely different operating system. This stark contrast really highlights two entirely different corporate strategies for the post-PC consumer. Apple built the iPad as a premium $499 plus feature-rich Swiss Army knife. It was basically meant to be a computer replacement. Amazon, conversely, built the Kindle Fire as a $199 bargain consumption device. They intentionally left out things like cameras and larger memory banks to hit a minimum viable product that could be aggressively priced. They literally weren't even fighting the same war. Apple was selling a premium product for an immediate profit, while Amazon was selling a highly accessible storefront. And this all boils down to one absolutely critical metric: the install base. This is the total number of products actually in use, rather than just measuring unit sales over a single quarter. Bezos knew, he absolutely knew, that getting devices into people's hands was vastly more important than making a quick $50 profit on the hardware itself. Whoever controlled the install base controlled the digital library of the future. Now, what's really brilliant about this strategy is how Amazon ensured its content wasn't just trapped on a single device. While Apple largely locked you into their specific hardware, Amazon pushed a super seamless buy once, read everywhere strategy. You could start a book on your Kindle Fire and pick up right where you left off on your PC, your Android phone, or even your iPad using Amazon's Whisper Sync technology. They were quietly locking users right into the Amazon ecosystem, making the switching costs for consumers incredibly high. So, who exactly was this $1999 ecosystem gateway designed for? Well, Amazon had three distinct targets. First, media junkies, people who were rapidly consuming movies, music, and books and craved Amazon's vast, cheap selection. Second, children and mobile gamers. Parents loved it because at under $200 with a rugged Gorilla Glass screen, it was practically a disposable, low-risk tablet for kids. And finally, higher education. College students, desperate for relief from heavy backpacks and outrageously expensive textbooks, were highly cost-sensitive and perfectly primed for digital alternatives. And Amazon was willing to do whatever it took to capture these audiences. Just look at how, over merely 4 years, the standard Kindle e-reader price relentlessly plummeted from $3.99 down to a mere $79 by late 2011. This was no accident, folks. This was a deliberate, incredibly aggressive strategy to slash hardware costs, to lock in their user base before competitors like Barnes & Noble could establish any sort of meaningful footholds.
Which brings us right back to the resolution of our initial mystery. How on earth do you survive selling hardware at cost? Well, you employ the famous razor blade business model. You sell the initial product, the razor, or in this case, the Kindle Fire, at a massive discount, sometimes even taking a literal loss on it. But you do this because you know you're going to profit massively and repeatedly off the dependent goods, the blades or the digital content.
Let's break down exactly what those blades were for Amazon, because they unlocked four massive ecosystem revenue streams. First, content sales. Amazon had a staggering 18 million movies, TV shows, and songs ready to go. Second, commerce. Studies showed Kindle owners bought over 3 times as many books after switching to digital, and Amazon expected Fire users to buy about $50 more a month in physical goods just because shopping from the couch was now dangerously easy. Third, their app marketplace, which exploded to 50,000 apps in just 18 months. And fourth, advertising through clever little lock screen special offers.
So, the absolute magic number behind this strategy: 30. A 30% gross margin is exactly what Amazon enjoyed on all those media content sales, as well as the cut they took from every single app purchased in their store. While the gross margin on the hardware was essentially zero, they were raking in a healthy 30% profit every single time a user rented a movie, downloaded an album, or bought a new game.
Then there's this number, 10. $10 in estimated CPM, that's revenue per 1,000 impressions, generated purely by putting advertisements right on the device's lock screen. Millennial Media reported a 19% daily increase in ad impressions on the Kindle Fire right after launch, which equated to roughly 300 million impressions a month. The Kindle Fire wasn't just a tablet, it was a permanent, subsidized billboard sitting in millions of living rooms. When you tie all these economics together, it reveals exactly why Wall Street was so wrong to panic in the first place. Analysts were only looking at the hardware, which was sold at a 0% margin, but look at the lifetime value trailing right behind it. A 20% gross margin on an expected steady stream of ebooks, a 30% gross margin on media content, and perhaps most importantly, an estimated $50 per month in incremental e-commerce purchases, which also yielded a 20% margin. Suddenly, that $199 hardware loss translates to incredible, continuous, lifelong value from a perfectly locked-in customer. Which leaves us with a really powerful question to consider. As you look around your house, at your own smart speakers, your streaming sticks, and your tablets, you kind of have to ask, is the future of hardware just a subsidized billboard for digital content? Amazon's massive $199 gamble on the Kindle Fire proved that the device itself is no longer the product. The device is just the Trojan horse, inviting a vast digital storefront right into your lap. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope it changes the way you look at the tech you buy every single day.